When a struggling dishwasher gave away her last bowl of soup to two hungry kids, she never imagined what would happen next. 15 years later, a Rolls-Royce stopped in front of her tiny house, and what stepped out would make her knees buckle. But before we get to that moment, you need to know who she really was and why the world tried to erase her. Because what happened in that little diner, it didn't just save two children. It changed the course of 3 lives forever. The neighborhood was still. Morning sunlight crept slowly over the rooftops, melting the frost on mailbox lids and bathing the cracked sidewalks in a soft golden hue. Birds chirped faintly, children's backpacks sat by doors, and front lawns glistened with dew. It was just another quiet Monday morning in Maplewood Crescent, until the silence shattered. The low, throaty rumble of a powerful engine rolled through the street like thunder. Curtains twitched open. Coffee mugs were paused mid-air. Dogs barked at the sudden disturbance. Every head turned toward the noise. A sleek black Rolls-Royce crept around the corner, polished like obsidian, the silver spirit of ecstasy gleaming proudly on its hood. It moved with purpose, its tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. The car glided over potholes as though floating on air before it came to a stop in front of a small, aging house at the very end of the cul-de-sac. It didn't belong here. Neighbors began to step outside, whispering with furrowed brows and curious eyes. Whose car is that? Is it a celebrity? Is someone in trouble? Inside the small house, 48-year-old Maya Collins stood in her narrow kitchen, hands submerged in lukewarm dishwater, scrubbing the same plate she had already cleaned twice. Her back ached, her fingers cracked from years of soap and scouring pads. But her mind was elsewhere. Her brother was still asleep in the room next door. The smell of toast lingered in the air. The floor creaked softly beneath her tired feet. Then she heard it. The engine's growl. Maya looked up sharply, her brows furrowed. She stepped to the small, fogged-up window above the sink and pushed aside the thin lace curtain. The sight made her breath hitch. A Rolls-Royce, right in front of her home. Her heart skipped once, twice. She stared harder. From the back seat emerged a tall young man in a navy suit, expensive and tailored to perfection. His eyes, beneath a calm and composed exterior, shimmered with emotion. Beside him, a poised young woman stepped out, her heels clicking softly on the pavement, her sleek, black dress fluttering in the breeze. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. Yet something in her eyes, warmth, longing, grief, struck Maya's chest like a memory. The man looked around, then turned his eyes toward Maya's front door. He took a deep breath, straightened his jacket, and began walking. The woman followed closely, her hands trembling ever so slightly at her sides. Inside, Maya's breath quickened. The dish slipped from her fingers and clattered in the sink. She dried her hands on her apron slowly, deliberately, her pulse roaring in her ears. There was a strange flutter in her chest, one she hadn't felt in over a decade, a stirring of something she had long buried. Recognition. A knock came at the door, firm, gentle, measured. She walked toward it, her slippers scuffing the wooden floor. She placed a hand on the doorknob and paused. Her fingers trembled. For a moment she hesitated, staring at the chipped paint of the front door, as though behind it waited not just visitors, but the past she had spent years trying to forget. And then she opened it. The sun hit her face. The world outside felt brighter than it had a second ago. The young man and woman stood there, frozen, as if they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. The silence between them stretched, heavy and trembling. Then the man's voice cracked the quiet, soft and reverent. "Miss Maya, do you remember us?" Her breath caught, her vision blurred. She stared at him, then at the young woman beside him. For a long moment, Time folded in on itself. Her tired eyes scanned their faces, and then she saw it. A familiar flicker in the girl's dimples. The way the man tilted his head, just like he did when he was nervous as a child. Tears began to well up. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The years fell away like autumn leaves. She pressed her hand to her chest, voice trembling as she whispered, "Dev? Lila?" Both of them nodded, eyes brimming. Maya gasped. Her knees nearly buckled. She reached out and pulled them both into her arms, holding them tight, as though trying to make up for all the lost years in one desperate embrace. How could I forget the two little angels I found behind that kitchen door on that bitter December night? They held her just as tightly. Behind them, the engine of the Rolls-Royce purred softly, like a lion waiting in patience. Neighbors watched from porches, unsure of what they were witnessing. No one moved, no one spoke. It was as if the world itself had paused to let the moment happen. Maya pulled them inside, her hands trembling as she reached for the kettle. I have to make tea. We always used to share tea, remember?" They sat around her tiny table, knees bumping against old chairs with peeling paint. Maya placed 3 mugs down, one by one. The scent of black tea filled the air, mingling with the scent of old memories. The young woman, Lila, now poised and elegant, took Maya's hand and whispered, "We've been looking for you for years." Maya wiped a tear from her cheek. As they began to talk, the past began to unspool, slow and heavy with meaning. But somewhere inside Maya, something had already shifted. Because she knew, this moment wasn't just about the past. It was the beginning of something new, something that had taken 15 long years to return to her doorstep. The Rolls-Royce had long since pulled away. The neighbors eventually returned to their lives. Lawn sprinklers clicked back on. The hum of distant traffic returned. But inside Maya Collins' little house, time still moved differently. The tea mug sat half full on the table. Silence filled the room now. But it wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was the quiet after a storm of tears. The kind of stillness that follows a miracle you never dared to expect. The clock on the wall ticked gently, 9:42 a.m. Maya sat on her small couch, her apron still damp, her breath still shallow. Her eyes were fixed on the door long after it had closed behind Dev and Lila. She hadn't even noticed when they slipped an envelope into her hand. Inside, it was a simple, handwritten note. "This is only the beginning. We'll come back for you, we promise." Dev and Lila. Maya's hands trembled as she folded the note. Her chest rose and fell with slow, uneven breaths. Then, just like always, she stood. Because when life had trained you to expect nothing, even miracles felt like interruptions, and there were still dishes to wash. Her home was tiny, 2 bedrooms, one of which she shared with her brother, Terrence. The other room, technically hers, barely fit a twin bed and a dresser she'd rescued from a curbside years ago. Every morning began the same way. Wake before dawn. Toast 2 slices of bread. Make oatmeal with exactly 2 spoons of sugar. Never more, never less. Feed Terrence. Help him dress. Catch the 6:05 a.m. bus downtown. Maya worked at Crescent Cafe, a modest diner tucked behind a gas station. She wasn't a waitress or a cook. Those were positions they gave to the younger ones. She scrubbed trays, cleaned toilets, took out garbage, and sometimes, if she finished fast enough, she'd help restock the front shelves. Her paycheck came in brown envelopes every 2 weeks. No direct deposit, no benefits. But it was honest work, and Maya was used to hard work. She always had been. No one really knew who she was. At the diner, they called her Miss M. She never talked about her past, never mentioned her age, though her hands and her spine told the truth better than any calendar could. The younger waitresses gossiped in the back room, scrolling on their phones, laughing at Instagram videos. Maya kept her head down. She ate alone. She walked home alone. And when she came back to her little house each evening, back to peeling wallpaper and flickering lights, she'd quietly lower herself onto the couch, cup of tea in hand, and stare at the blank television screen. The only photo on her wall was faded. 2 children wrapped in winter coats, smiling through chapped lips and frozen cheeks. She never told anyone who they were. She didn't have to. Because every night Maya whispered their names before she slept. Development. Lila. I hope you're safe. I hope someone out there was kind to you. Life hadn't been kind to Maya. At 11, she lost her mother to an overdose. At 14, she was separated from her brother and passed through 5 foster homes in 2 years. At 17, she dropped out of high school to care for Terrence, who was finally reunited with her, but with permanent neurological damage. Since then, nothing had been easy, but she had never once taken what wasn't hers, never once expected handouts, and never once turned her back on someone who needed help, even when she had nothing, even when it cost her everything. Sometimes, on her rare day off, Maya would take the bus to the edge of town, where the richer neighborhoods began. She'd walk past the fancy grocery stores with shiny carts and sparkling floors. She'd watch couples sip lattes at sidewalk cafes. She never felt bitter. She just wondered what it felt like to sit for an hour without rushing, to eat a meal you didn't have to cook, to feel full. Then, she'd return home, make grilled cheese with stale bread, and smile at Terrence while they watched reruns of cartoons from the 90s. But today was different. Today, something had cracked. After Dev and Lila left, Maya couldn't bring herself to finish the dishes. She sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the spot where they stood. The young man in that custom suit. The young woman in those heels and pearls. Those were her babies. The same children she fed behind the restaurant's dumpster 15 years ago. The same ones who once handed her a paper flower and whispered, "You're our angel." And now they were grown, successful, elegant, and they remembered her. They came back for her. That single thought echoed in her chest, again and again, louder than anything else. They remembered me. She didn't know what they wanted, or what would happen next. But somehow, after years of gray skies, Maya felt the first glimpse of dawn. Later that night, she tucked Terrence into bed. She kissed his forehead, dimmed the lights, and closed the door softly behind her. Then she returned to her own tiny room, sat at the edge of the bed, and opened the envelope again. This time, another slip of paper fell out, one she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't handwritten. It was printed. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp. A car will be waiting. Please come. We want to show you something." Dev and Lila Maya clutched the note to her chest. Tears slipped down her cheeks silently, sliding into the fabric of her nightgown. For the first time in years, she whispered a prayer. Not for protection, not for strength, but for the courage to hope again. The wind howled down the alleyways like a wild animal that winter. Maplewood had always been cold in December, but that year it wasn't just the temperature that bit skin, it was the loneliness. The kind that curled beneath your clothes and settled inside your bones. It was the kind of cold that punished the poor. And Maya Collins was broke. She had just finished her 3rd shift in 24 hours. The diner had cut her hours the week before. The nursing home job let her go. Budget issues, they said. So she picked up night janitorial work at the mall. Paid in cash, off the books. No union, no breaks, just buckets and bleach and silence. She walked home in the dark that night, her sneakers soaked through from slush. Her jacket, secondhand, too small, barely clung to her shoulders. Her breath puffed out in clouds as she hugged herself tightly, cringing with each gust. She hadn't eaten since morning. There was half a loaf of bread waiting for her at home, maybe some rice. She crossed the same alley she always did, an ugly shortcut behind the restaurant district. Trash bins overflowed. Rats skittered in the shadows. No one lingered here. But that night, something stopped her. A sound. Not a rat, not wind. A whimper. Maya froze. She turned her head slowly toward the far end of the alley. At first, she thought it was just wind playing tricks. Then she heard it again, clearer. A child, crying. Her heart dropped. She stepped cautiously forward, eyes scanning the shadows. She rounded the back of a dumpster, and there, curled up behind a stack of milk crates, were two children, a boy and a girl. No older than 6 or 7. The girl's arm was wrapped tightly around the boy's shoulders, shielding him from the wind. Her coat was thin and damp, and the boy had no gloves. His lips were blue. Their shoes didn't match. They looked up at her with wide, terrified eyes. The girl didn't speak. She just held the boy tighter and moved as if to shield him from Maya too. "It's okay," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm not here to hurt you." She knelt down, keeping her movements slow, careful, as if approaching a wounded bird. "Are you two alone?" The girl nodded. The boy shivered violently, burying his face in her side. Maya's heart clenched. She'd seen abandoned children before, but there was something in these two, the quiet dignity of the girl, the desperate trust in the boy, that hit her differently. "Where are your parents?" she asked gently. Silence. Then the girl murmured, voice barely audible. "They left. They said they'd be back. It's been 2 days." Maya bit her lip. She blinked fast, trying to keep the tears down. Not now, not in front of them. She looked around. No coats, no backpacks, no food, just 2 kids huddled behind a dumpster, trying not to die. She took them home that night. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't think twice. Her apartment was tiny, just 1 room, 1 mattress, and a space heater that worked half the time. But that night, Maya split her last 2 slices of bread 3 ways. She gave them the only 2 clean blankets she had. She sat up all night watching them breathe, her back pressed against the wall, heart hammering like a drum. And when the boy woke crying at 2 a.m., she wrapped him in her arms and hummed a lullaby she hadn't sung since she was a child herself. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're safe now." The next morning, she made oatmeal with the last of the sugar. The children didn't speak much, but when Maya handed the boy his bowl, he looked up at her with solemn eyes and whispered, "Thank you, angel lady." That was the moment. Not when she found them, not when she fed them, but right then, hearing that small voice call her angel. That was when Maya made a decision. She wouldn't let them go, no matter what. Over the next 2 weeks, she called shelters. None would take all 3 of them. She tried social services. The moment she mentioned the children weren't hers, they threatened to dispatch a field agent. Maya hung up before giving her address. She worked nights, left crackers by their pillows. She taught the girl how to braid her hair. She showed the boy how to warm his socks over the heater. She began to believe, somehow, that this could last. But it didn't. Nothing good ever stayed. 3 weeks later, a neighbor reported her. Social workers came. They didn't ask questions. They took the children that same day. The girl clutched Maya's hand until the last second, screaming. The boy sobbed so hard he threw up in the social worker's car. "No, please don't let them take us." Maya chased the car barefoot for half a block before collapsing in the snow, her voice hoarse from screaming. She never saw them again. Until yesterday. As Maya lay in bed that night 15 years later, staring at the ceiling, she whispered the words she had carried like prayer beads in her heart for over a decade. I really tried." She closed her eyes, feeling the old grief and the new hope intertwine like smoke. Because now they were back, and they wanted her to come with them, tomorrow at 10 a.m., a car would be waiting. But Maya couldn't help wonder, would they still want her after they learned what she had done? Maya barely slept that night. She kept checking the clock every hour, eyes flicking to the glowing digits, heart pounding like it was trying to climb out of her chest. 9 a.m. She sat on the edge of her bed, her worn shoes neatly placed in front of her. The house was silent except for the faint buzz of the old refrigerator. Terrence was still sleeping. She had left him a note. "Going out, back soon. There's cereal. Don't wait up." The note shook in her fingers as she taped it to the fridge. She didn't own fancy clothes. She hadn't worn makeup in years. Her coat had a tear beneath the left arm, and her scarf was faded blue, almost gray. Still, she stood tall as she walked to the door. She took one last look at the chipped paint on the walls, the photographs, the life she'd built out of scraps. And then she stepped outside. A black town car was waiting at the curb. Not a Rolls-Royce this time, but still sleek, expensive. The kind of car Maya would normally walk past without looking twice, assuming it was for someone else. The driver stepped out immediately. He wore a tailored suit, dark sunglasses, and had a polite but unreadable face. "Ms. Collins," he asked, holding the door open. She nodded, her throat too dry to speak. She ducked into the back seat, heart thudding in her ears. The car ride felt like being carried through a dream. They passed neighborhoods Maya had never been to. Areas where the sidewalks were clean, where the garbage trucks made their rounds on time, and the houses looked like magazine covers. Children played behind tall iron gates. Joggers ran with wireless earbuds and sparkling water bottles. Maya sat with her hands folded in her lap, her eyes wide and unsure. "I don't belong here," she thought. "This isn't my world." But then she remembered the note. "We want to show you something." And so she kept breathing, 1 second at a time. 40 minutes later, the car pulled into a long private drive flanked by tall trees. At the end stood a white building with glass walls and ivy climbing up the sides. A woman in a beige suit waited by the door. As Maya stepped out, the woman smiled warmly. "Ms. Collins, welcome. Dev and Lila are waiting for you inside." Inside, the building looked more like a sanctuary than an office. Warm lighting, walls lined with children's art, shelves filled with books and educational toys. A large plaque on the far wall read, "The Willow Foundation, no child left behind ever." Maya stared. Then Dev appeared, walking briskly down the hallway toward her. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a soft sweater and jeans. But he looked just as powerful, just as quietly confident. "You came," he said, his voice full of something between awe and relief. She nodded slowly. "I didn't know if I should," she whispered. "I wasn't sure I'd still be welcome." He looked stunned. "Maya, you saved our lives." And then, just behind him, Lila emerged. She was still as radiant as the day before, taller now, but still with those deep, steady eyes that once scanned dumpsters for scraps. She walked right up to Maya, took her hand and whispered, "We built all of this because of you." They brought her to a conference room, not to interrogate her, not to honor her, but to explain. To tell her what had happened after that day, the day they were taken away. Lila spoke first. "We were separated at first, different foster homes. I cried every night. Dev stopped speaking completely." Maya's hand trembled. She couldn't meet their eyes. "But one day," Lila continued, "we were reunited in a group home. We made a promise that night, that when we grew up, we'd help kids like us. We said, we'll be the family someone else didn't get to be," Dev added softly. "And we never forgot the woman who fed us her last meal behind that diner, who gave us a bed when she had none, who stayed awake all night just to keep us warm." They showed her pictures of the shelters they'd built, the mobile food trucks they ran, the legal team they funded to protect exploited children. A whole world Maya never imagined, all somehow growing out of that one winter night in a back alley. Maya tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Finally, she choked. "I didn't do enough. I let them take you. I should have fought harder." Dev took her hand, firm and kind. "You gave us what no one else would have risked, your heart. That was enough, more than enough." Lila nodded, her voice steady but thick with tears. "You gave us hope when we were invisible to the world." Then Dev handed her a folder. Inside were documents. One was a job offer from the foundation, Director of Community Outreach. Another was a deed to a house, a real house with a garden and a sunroom, and enough space for her and Terrence to live with dignity. She looked up, stunned. "Why?" Lila smiled. "Because you always belonged in the light. You just didn't have the map to get here." Maya broke down sobbing. Not the quiet tears she had trained herself to cry. These were full, raw sobs, 15 years of silent pain spilling out all at once. Dev and Lila sat with her. No cameras, no reporters, just three people, reunited not by blood, but by love. And for the first time in a long, long time, Maya believed she was home. The house was too quiet. Maya sat alone in the sunroom Dev and Lila had shown her just 2 days ago. Sunlight filtered through soft white curtains, casting golden patterns on the hardwood floor. In front of her sat an unopened cardboard box, the one she hadn't touched in years. She had sealed it shut the day she moved into that one-bedroom apartment after losing her job at the nursing home. It had followed her through every eviction, every shelter, every borrowed floor to sleep on. But she had never opened it, not until now. Her fingers trembled as she peeled the packing tape back. Inside, a stack of old letters, newspaper clippings, and one faded photograph. 2 kids, laughing. A boy and a girl, 10 and 11, her and Terrence, back when the world still felt like it had second chances. Maya held the photo for a long time. She traced the boy's face with her thumb. Those wide eyes, that crooked smile. He used to follow her everywhere, dragging a stuffed raccoon by the tail. He had night terrors for years after their mom died. Maya would sit beside his bed, stroking his hair until he fell asleep. And then came the system. Foster homes, splits, transfers, paperwork. One day, Terrence was just gone. They said he got placed. She was told it was better for both of them. But she knew the truth. They were just numbers, files to move around. No one cared if they ever saw each other again. She pulled out a wrinkled sheet of notebook paper. It was a letter, one she'd written but never mailed, addressed to Terrence. "Hey kid, I'm sorry they took you. I didn't know how to stop them. I swear I looked. I called. I begged. I even showed up at that big..." Dev noticed her the moment she stepped in. "You okay?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Do you have someone who can help me find someone?" He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Within 2 hours, the Willow Foundation had assigned her a legal investigator. A tall woman named Carla with a steel voice and a soft heart. She asked Maya only one thing. "Do you want to know the truth, even if it hurts?" And Maya, finally ready, whispered, "Yes." The search took 3 weeks. Every day, Maya woke up with a knot in her stomach, wondering if she had made a mistake, wondering if maybe Terrence had forgotten her, or worse, if he blamed her. On the 22nd day, Carla called. "I found him." Maya's hands shook as she held the phone. "Is he okay? Where is he? Does he..." "No," Carla paused. then answered gently, "He's been looking for you too." The next morning, a knock came at the door. Maya opened it and time stopped. There he was, a man now, taller, leaner, but the same eyes, the same jaw, the same crooked smile she remembered from that old photograph. For a full second, they didn't speak. Then Terence whispered, "You kept it." She looked down. The letter was still in her hand. They embraced. Longer than either of them had ever hugged anyone in years. He held her like someone holding a life raft. She held him like someone who had finally woken up from a nightmare. They sat on the porch for hours, talking, laughing, crying, unpacking years of stories, foster homes, first jobs, scars no one else had seen. And then Maya said something she had carried like a stone in her chest for years. "I thought I failed you." Terence shook his head. His voice broke. "You didn't. You were the only one who ever really tried." That night, Maya placed the letter back in the box. But this time, she wrote a new one. To herself, a vow. "I will never bury my pain again. I will use it. I will speak for the girls no one defends. I will fight for the boys who disappear. I will be the voice I never had." Because some letters are never sent, but they still find their way home. The invitation came in a gold-trimmed envelope, hand-delivered by a courier in a navy blazer. Maya opened it slowly, eyes scanning the words again and again. The city of Baltimore cordially invites Maya Collins as guest of honor at the Mayor's Annual Civic Awards. Your years of quiet service, sacrifice, and compassion have made a difference that can no longer be ignored. Below that, embossed in soft ink, "You are the reason children believe in kindness again." Maya sat in silence for a long time. The invitation lay flat in her lap, but her thoughts were anything but calm. She had spent most of her life in the background, invisible, uninvited. And now, this? Her first instinct was to say no. She didn't like attention. She didn't trust it. The last time people gathered around her, it was to evict her from her job, to call her unfit, to take children away from her arms. But Dev and Lila both encouraged her. "You earned this," Lila said softly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "This isn't about showing off," Dev added. "It's about telling the truth, the kind of truth people need to hear." The day of the event arrived. Maya stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the dress Lila had picked out for her. It was soft beige, simple, elegant. She hardly recognized herself. Terence stood behind her, grinning. "You look like someone with a Netflix documentary," she laughed through nerves. "You sure I won't trip over my own feet? If you do, just pretend it's a dance move." The ceremony was held at the City Hall auditorium, grand, historic, packed wall to wall with reporters, civic leaders, and philanthropists. Banners lined the walls, each showing images of local heroes, teachers, nurses, shelter directors, community organizers, and, at the center, a photo of Maya, candidate, her holding a child's hand outside a mobile soup kitchen. Maya stood backstage, heart in her throat. She could hear the mayor's voice echoing from the podium. "Tonight, we recognize those who never asked for applause, who changed lives not with power, but with presence. And there is one woman here tonight who gave her last meal to 2 hungry strangers, who sheltered children who had no names, who fought for others when she had nothing for herself, and who reminds us that quiet acts of love are what build a city's soul." Maya stepped out into the spotlight, and for the first time in her life, people stood, hundreds of them, standing, clapping, some even crying. Maya couldn't speak at first. Her throat was tight. But then, she saw Dev and Lila in the front row, hands joined. She saw Terence holding up his phone with a proud smile. And she knew. This moment wasn't just hers. It belonged to every person who had ever been unseen. She approached the podium, took a breath, and began. I don't have fancy words. I'm not a politician or a CEO. I used to wash dishes in a diner that doesn't exist anymore. But I saw hunger in the eyes of 2 kids one night, and I gave them what little I had. Because someone once did that for me. I didn't think it would change anything. I just knew I couldn't walk away. The room was silent. You could hear people sniffle softly. Maya continued. I've been homeless. I've been alone. I've been told I didn't matter. But I'm here, and tonight, I want every child in this city to know you matter, even if they forget your name, even if they take away your home. You still matter. As applause erupted, Maya stepped back. The mayor handed her a crystal plaque. For courage and compassion, it read. She held it close, but not like a trophy, like a memory, like a reminder of every night she cried herself to sleep, wondering if her kindness had meant anything. Now she knew. But just as she descended the steps from the stage, she froze. Her eyes landed on someone standing near the back. A woman, late 60s, gray coat, familiar eyes Maya hadn't seen in almost 4 decades. Her breath caught. Her voice dropped. Mom? The woman hesitated. Her hands trembled. Then she stepped forward. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know how to find you, the woman whispered. They told me you were adopted. I begged. I searched. But the system said I had no right. Maya's world tilted. Years of abandoned hope, of assuming the worst, collapsed in an instant. Why now? Maya whispered, her voice cracking. Because I saw your name on the news, her mother said. And I knew. That's my daughter. They embraced, tight, shaking, not perfect, not polished, but real. 2 broken hearts finding each other in the middle of a public stage. The crowd didn't matter. The cameras didn't matter. In that moment, only love did. The diner was still there, or at least the bones of it were. Maya stood across the street in the early morning light, the cold wind brushing against her face, scarf tight around her neck. It had been 15 years, 15 long, brutal, beautiful years. The sign was crooked, the windows boarded, paint chipped and peeled like forgotten stories. But to her, it was sacred ground. This was the place where 2 hungry children changed the entire trajectory of her life, where she gave away her last meal and unknowingly planted the seed of something far greater than survival. She crossed the street slowly, hand running along the rusted metal edge of the door. The padlock was still there. But this time she had the key. Inside, the dust was thick, but the memories, vivid. She could still see herself behind the counter, hair tied back, apron stained, feet aching. She remembered the booth where the kids had sat, faces thin, eyes too old for their age. She remembered the way the boy refused to cry, the way the girl looked up at her with a trembling smile as she pushed the plate forward. Just a sandwich. But that night, it had been everything. Maya walked to that same booth and sat down. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she let the silence speak. Later that afternoon, Terrence met her there. He ducked under the half-broken entrance with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. You sure about this? He asked, brushing a cobweb from his jacket. Maya nodded. It's time. They spent weeks cleaning the place. Dev brought volunteers from the foundation. Lila handled permits and paperwork. And a group of neighborhood teens, once labeled troubled, painted the walls with bright colors and quiet pride. The community rallied around her, not because of fame, but because she had once seen them when no one else did. Now they were returning the gaze. 6 months later, the closed sign was gone. In its place, a new one. The Lighthouse Cafe where no one eats alone. The grand reopening was quiet. No red carpet, no press. Just Maya. An old radio playing soul music and a line of people wrapped around the block. Some came for the food. Some came for the warmth. But most came because they'd heard the story of a dishwasher who gave away her last sandwich, of two orphans who grew up and never forgot, of a woman who had every reason to give up and chose to give. Inside, the booths were full. A young mother cried softly as her child ate in peace. An elderly man handed Maya a rose and whispered, "You helped my niece when no one else would." And in the far corner sat the boy and girl, now grown, Dev and Lila, watching her, eyes full of quiet joy. Later that evening, as the cafe emptied out, Maya walked outside to breathe in the cool night air. A soft light spilled from the windows behind her, casting long shadows on the pavement. Terrence joined her, a cup of tea in his hands. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked. She smiled gently. "Every day." "You saved their lives," he said. She looked back at the cafe. "No, they saved mine." Just then, headlights glowed down the road. A long black car pulled up. Not a limo, not this time. It was a bus, a small white school bus, with the words Lighthouse Outreach written on the side. The door opened, and out stepped 7 kids, tired, hungry, but safe. Maya held the door open wide as they walked in. No questions asked, no papers signed, just warm food and warmer arms. And so the diner became more than a cafe. It became a beacon, a place where light met shadow, where stories began again. And every plate served came with something far greater than food. It came with hope. Because once upon a time, a struggling dishwasher gave away her last meal. And 15 years later, a city gave her a legacy. The helicopter came just after sunrise. The thumping of its blades shattered the early morning silence over East Baltimore like a drum roll before a miracle. People came outside in their pajamas. Phones pointed at the sky. Children stopped their bikes. A neighbor dropped his coffee. And inside the Lighthouse Cafe, Maya looked up. For a moment, she froze, because something deep in her chest remembered that sound. Not from joy, from fear, from the night they took the children. Terrence burst through the kitchen doors, apron still on. "Maya, someone just said the chopper's landing here." Maya stepped out the front door. Her heart raced. Was this another cruel twist of fate? A media stunt? Or worse, some government agency arriving too late to punish something already healed? But then, she saw it. On the side of the helicopter, L&J Foundation, Emergency Relief. And stepping out first was Dev, wearing a clean navy suit, wind in his curls, clipboard in hand. Then Lila, in jeans and a hoodie, smiling wide. The crowd gasped, and before anyone could say a word, a massive truck pulled up behind the cafe. Volunteers jumped out. They began unloading crates, generators, portable kitchen gear, blankets, medical kits. It was an operation. Not for show, for service. Dev grabbed a megaphone and stepped onto a crate. "Good morning, neighbors. My name is Dev, and this is Lila. You don't know us, but years ago, a woman fed us when no one else would. That act didn't just save our bodies. It gave us a mission. Starting today, this block becomes the first official site of the Lighthouse Relief Network. Mobile kitchens, job training, free housing services, youth mentorship, not just for Baltimore, but from Baltimore." Maya stood at the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. People began cheering, clapping, hugging one another. The same neighborhood that once looked at her with suspicion, now looked at her like she was the reason the sun rose. But the most emotional moment wasn't the speech. It came minutes later. When Lila took Maya's hand, pulled her gently aside, and handed her a sealed envelope. "We kept this from you because we wanted it to be real before we told you." Maya opened it slowly. Inside, a legal document. "Maya Collins is hereby appointed chairwoman of the Lighthouse Relief Board," she gasped. "What?" Lila nodded. "You gave us our first meal. Now we're giving you your own table." But then, Maya noticed something else. Another paper, shorter, more personal, a handwritten letter, folded, yellowed at the edges. It began, "Dear Ms. Collins, you don't know me, but I've known you for years. I was in the truck the night you gave away your last meal. I was the delivery boy, the one who saw you cry in the freezer. I never forgot you. That moment changed me. It made me believe there were still good people left." Maya read it over and over, hands trembling. The letter ended like this: "Greater than I made it out. I got an education. I now work for the governor's office. And I was the one who nominated you for the mayor's award. I just wanted you to know. Your light reached farther than you ever imagined." Maya folded the letter against her chest, looking up at the sky as the helicopter lifted off again. The sun had fully risen now, golden light pouring across the rooftops. A reporter approached her. "Ma'am, can I ask, what does it feel like, knowing your kindness built all this?" Maya smiled gently. Her voice was soft. "It feels like peace, like knowing every no in my life was leading to a bigger yes. And like maybe I wasn't invisible after all." As the crowd dispersed and the cafe reopened its doors, a small girl tugged at Maya's apron. "Miss Maya?" she asked shyly. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you the lady from the helicopter?" Maya knelt down with a smile. "No, baby. The helicopter wasn't for me. It was for all of us." Guys, thanks for watching this story. I hope you liked it. Let me know about your thoughts in the comment section.